You're listening to ESOPOD, the Folience ESOP podcast. Hello and welcome to the ESOPOD. I am Sean Hoy from the Folience ESOP communication team. And today I'm joined by the CEO of Folience, Daniel Goldstein. Daniel, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Sean. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
I feel like most people probably know who you are. They've seen you. You go around, you do a roadshow all the time, every year for the share reveal and other times. But maybe for someone who is just starting or might start in 2 years from now, why don't you give people a brief introduction of where you came from, what you do now?
Sure. So I am currently CEO. However, today is Monday, December 11th, 2023. And so 20 days from now, I will no longer be CEO as I'm retiring from that position. I joined Folience in April of 2016, became president at the end of that year and CEO shortly following that in February of 2017, and have had the wonderful opportunity and honor to work with fellow co-owners in founding Folience on January 1, 2017, and building the portfolio, building the share value, building the culture, and getting to all kinds of success that we may or may not talk about today.
Great. So you said you joined in 2016. What were you doing before that?
Okay. Let's see. Working backwards, for 2 years before that, I had been in California working for a bi-coastal wealth management firm, and was brought in to be the successor for the founder owner of the firm, and found out that he really had no intention to name a successor. So I decided to leave that shortly. FYI, it was just last year that he actually named his successor. So it's a good thing that I left in 2015, since that didn't happen until 2022. And before that, I had lived for about 15 or 16 years in Italy, where I had taken care of the business, investments, and nonprofit foundation for a private Italian industrial family that had been very successful. And then sort of before that, I'd been in Kansas City for 3 years. I'd been in Albany, New York, where I grew up, and went back to go to graduate school. And before that, started after college working in Boston for a couple of years.
So you've been all over the place.
I have been very lucky to have been all over the place.
Do you miss Italy? You ever go back?
Well, COVID kind of interrupted everyone's plans, but I've been back a couple times. It was absolutely wonderful living there. And I do believe that there are chapters in life. And so that was a particularly long and enjoyable chapter. And then I had an equally or more enjoyable one with Folience, and now looking forward to the next chapter. So yes and no. Like anything, there's the good, but there's also the good to move on.
Speaking of chapters, it seems like you were kind of here for Folience's almost introduction, the first chapter almost. What do you feel like you had a lot of challenge?
Well, so the ESOP, as you know, was formed in 1986, so way, way before me. And then that was partial, went 100% in 2012. And so when I came in 2016, though, because the family had still really been directly managing the board and therefore somewhat the culture of the company, I've heard that the ESOP culture was not very developed. And it was really just around 2017, when Folience was founded, that new emphasis and energy was put into the ESOP communication team, ESOP education activities, communication, and that really took off. The challenges, I think, in the beginning were on the financial side. Following the sale of KCRG, the company was financially not doing very well, which is why there was the need and desire to set up a holding company, acquire profitable businesses, and build out the ESOP holding company. And I think also culturally, there had been a long period of not really attending to building an employee-owned culture. And so I think that a lot of people were quite skeptical in the beginning of how long or consistent that build of culture was going to be. But I think that with some persistence and consistency and patience, we won a lot of hearts and minds. And the more people that joined into building it, the more it became organic and sort of held from the bottom up instead of from the top down.
So with the culture, do you feel like it's changed significantly since you have started?
Absolutely. It has changed considerably. I think that there's much greater voice for employee owners. I won't reach for my wallet, I'll reach for my cabinet and say that, of course, bringing out the Licensed Act has been a great thing. And I will be the first to say that when this was first launched, I don't think anybody believed in it. And as I always say, this is a plastic card unless you use it. And a lot more people are using it. And it's been a learning experience for management that when somebody pulls out their licensed act, that means that you need to be listened to. The suggestions need to be worked through. There needs to be feedback, whether something is implemented or not. And that has taken a lot of hold. I've seen a considerable amount of people stepping up, innovation, new ideas from people that are using their licensed act. And also, as some would say, there always was or should have been the License Act, whether there's the card or not. It's just that this is a tangible representation of the culture that we have at Folience.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't always bring out my license to act and show it to people, but I for sure kind of invoke that, like, okay, I'm using my license now, and I'm going to make the suggestion. And I think people get it, but it is
That's
nice to be
great.
able to physically take it out and show people. That's cool.
I think the other challenge, Sean, is that, and this still happens, that sometimes people confuse being an owner and being an employee owner. And that's a really important distinction. So when you're an owner, you basically just decide everything. And a lot of people say, well, this isn't real being an employee owner because I don't get to decide everything. That's absolutely right. Because being an employee owner is sharing in the value. And so some people say, well, then why don't you just call it being a shareholder? Well, there's more than just having that shareholder position, is that you can influence every day, as the back of the card says, you can influence that growth of value. And so it's really important that there's still this distinction that some people, a lot of times it's the people that are new that are coming into the ESOP, that they still need to understand the difference between being an owner and being an employee owner. And I think that when we get more of that distinction, there will be a little bit less confusion, a little bit more of people really pulling together to build the value of what they own together.
Great, yeah. Uh, so you've been here for a while. It's probably going to be really hard. If you could only pick one thing, what would be one of your favorite things that's happened here at Folience?
Well, it'd be easy to say when we were awarded the 2022 National Employee Owned Company of the Year, because that was just such a great distinction and honor. And that's wonderful. But honestly, I think that there are more than that. That was, a great honor both internally and externally. Um, I'll never forget the days of standing up in front of the Lifeline employees and Cimarron employees and Cimarron, Kansas employees and announcing that their company was sold, which just creates huge panic, worries, anxiety, and now you're going to become employee owners, which I just think is such a wonderful thing to bring to people. Of course, it takes, again, that education and constant communication to get people to really understand it. But I think that that's really exciting. And then just so many little examples of, I don't want to call out any one person because then I'm going to leave out lots of other people. But there have been so many individual circumstances that may have been private, where people didn't know that somebody called me or sent me an email or came to my office or stopped me when I was walking through the plant and shared an idea, a suggestion, um, some form of gratitude for being part of the ESOP, and also public. Um, it's just really inspiring to see how much change we've gone through at all of our companies, changing from private family ownership to employee ownership, having employee owners step up at all levels, whether it's the newest hire who's coming in and really learning about employee ownership, or a long tenured employee, whether they're in a supervisory management position or not, stepping up and doing something like maybe starting ESOP podcast, for example. It's pretty cool when
Yeah,
that
that's a good
happens,
idea.
and it does not come from management. It comes from employee owners stepping up. And I think that all of those individual ones are sort of like my many, many favorite moments.
How about the opposite side? Have there been anything that was hard or challenges?
Oof, yeah. Um, Anytime that you need to let people go, whether it's for cause and merited, or because you have a business that is overstaffed or demand has fallen, that's always really, really difficult. It always should be. Um, Getting through COVID, that was tough. Employee owners rallied and did a great job, but especially in the very beginning when people had no idea what was going on, what was going to happen, just really concerned for the health and well-being of employees. Um, I'd say those were probably the hardest. Then, there were lots of little things with supply chain, workforce constraints, inflation, whether you have enough chassis, whether you're going to be able to get newspapers delivered because there's a delayed show. All of those things can really sort of gnaw at you.
So when companies in an ESOP aren't doing so hot, how do you avoid this feeling of like finger pointing and grumbling about like, well, this company's doing great, this one's not? How do you tackle
Yeah.
that?
Well, the first thing, when I first came into the ESOP community, um, all that I heard people talk about at conferences was that ESOPs were just these amazing things that went up and up and up and never had down moments. And I thought, this isn't helpful, because they're still businesses, and businesses are subject to volatility and cycles in the economy, or geographic factors, other things. And in fact, when my first 2 years with the ESOP, we had share price declines. That was difficult because there wasn't much that was out there in the ESOP community. And spoiler alert, this month there's a paper that I wrote about this that's going to be coming out from the National Center of Employee Ownership, because I think more people need to be talking about that. So when you have a holding company, a portfolio of businesses, and in our case, we've got three families of businesses that are generating revenue: media, ambulances, and trailers. It's easy at any one point in time to say, sort of point fingers and say, you're not doing as well, we're doing better, whatever. But if you look back at the history of the companies in the portfolio, each one of them has a moment where they've struggled and they've been supported by the others. And each one has had a moment where they've sort of been the hero of the moment and have given that safety net to the others. And so it would be a little bit like if you looked at your 401k. It's easy on one day to say, hey, I should just have everything in this one stock because it did really well this week. But look back next week, because maybe next week it's not going to do so well. And that's where that diversification plays out. So if we look at the first year of COVID, um, when businesses were closing, pulling advertising, the newspaper had a tough beginning of 2020. And trailers were a discretionary item. And so Cimarron had a tough beginning to their year, and Lifeline sells on long contracts. And so they actually made it through 2020 hitting budget, and that gave a lot of safety net to help both the Gazette and Cimarron recover. And as Cimarron was recovering, and then Lifeline started to have some issues with supply chain, and chassis were particularly difficult to get hold of, then both Cimarron and Gazette were giving that safety net to Lifeline. And so what's important is that everybody realizes the strength of that diversification and how it helps us all. Because what happened was in 2020, we had our highest share price since the start of the ESOP in 1986. And then it went up every year thereafter. And that's because of that diversification of one company helping the other when it needed it, and then the other providing that safety net or excess cash flow to invest in the growth of the business. And that's really helped. So it's just remembering the history and being transparent with people to remember why it is that we have these different companies in our portfolio.
Let's see. So way back at the beginning, you mentioned that by the time people see this, you very likely will not be CEO anymore. What's next for you?
Yeah. So I really want people to know that there's no ulterior motive that was hidden or not. At the beginning of 2022, my wife and I were looking at what we wanted to do for a life plan. And she and I both wanted to move back to the East Coast, where I'm from, to be closer to family, to be looking at what we wanted to do next personally in life. And so I started to discuss with the board. We came up with a 2-year plan to make sure that there's going to be a very good transition, to shore up whatever needed to be shoring up internally, and to go through a good process of finding the best possible leader to take Folience forward from that. So it's not the kind of thing that was decided quickly. So then 1 year into it, in January of 2023, I wanted everyone to know publicly so that there wouldn't be any rumors or conspiracy theories, especially as most of 2023, I was already living on the East Coast and traveling to where I needed to be. But I'm not using the word retirement because I'm not going to do nothing afterwards. I'm also not going to take another full-time job. I had the best full-time job in my life, so it'd be silly to give that up and then go take another one. I'm a passionate advocate for employee ownership, and I serve on the boards of other ESOPs, mostly in the manufacturing space across the US. I'm continuing to serve on the board of the ESOP Association and the Employee Ownership Foundation to help advocate for increased employee ownership opportunities across America. And I've actually gotten involved internationally in looking at spreading employee ownership um, in the UK and across Europe and beyond. So I'm going to be doing that. I also do enjoy working with manufacturing firms, and so I'll be continuing probably to do some work with manufacturing extension partnerships, which have been a great partner to all our businesses in Iowa, Kansas, and Oklahoma. And I'm also still staying active in the world of safety, because I think that there's a very strong tie between employee ownership culture and safety. It's really about getting employees more engaged in the decision making at the point where they're doing the work. And that is what builds capacity for greater safety, especially in manufacturing businesses.
I know I've seen some pictures and articles of you at the Capitol talking on behalf of employee ownership. Are you planning on doing any more of that?
Yep. So every year I go at least once a year to do advocacy for employee ownership. I'm on the executive committee of the Public Policy Council of the ESOP Association. And so pushing forward the agenda that will help promote employee ownership and protect it. Employee ownership is something that was created through legislation, and so need to always make sure that that's going to continue. And I do continue working with other groups as well, the National Center for Employee Ownership Expansion Network, with some international groups, because I just think that employee ownership really is a better deal for employees, their families, and their communities, certainly across the U.S., but also outside the U.S.
Great. So, based on your tenure here at Folience, do you have any insights or lessons that you'd like to tell future employee owners that might come on a year from now?
Yeah, get engaged. Learn what it is to have this, because it's not a plastic card, and there's just such great advantages to working in an employee-owned company and being an employee owner. And it's not just the financial benefit, which is substantial. And I've always said that the greatest risk to Foliance really isn't the external factors and economic volatility and sector and geography and all that. It's that employee owners stop really valuing what they have. And I know that it gets difficult, that everyone has a bad day or a hard week. But if people really think about what's different working for an employee owned company, and what is that benefit that you and your family are going to have, if we all keep that in mind and work together, then this great success that Foliance has is just going to keep continuing. I'm certainly going to be watching that.
Awesome. Well, do you have anything else that you'd like to talk about?
I just really am thankful for the opportunity to have been doing this for the last almost 8 years. It takes the entire team of people across all of Foliance's companies. It's just been wonderful working with so many different great people, watching some people really grow and develop during that time. Watching people work through difficult moments. We've had some pretty difficult moments over the last couple of years, and just seeing that success. I think it's going to be wonderful when people are seeing the benefit as they retire and they're able to really enjoy their golden years. That's really what this is all about. I think that as we improve on workplace ergonomics and safety, that it's not just about saving the financial wealth, it's also the health and well-being, to have just a really enjoyable retirement, that secure financial future. But it's not just about that. As our guest speaker this year said, it's also about what you're getting every year this year for your family, allowing you to have more freedom to really enjoy life, because you are saving up, earning that share in the company that's going to be there for your future. So I'm thankful for being able to have had this experience. It means a lot to me that I do believe that some people, I had to win their trust over, and I just want to thank everyone for that trust. Like I said, I'm excited to watch. I'm still counting on everyone for the next couple of years, because just like everyone, when you leave, I'm going to be a shareholder for a while now, but I'm just excited to
Yep,
see
you're
what
fully
people are going to.
vested too.
Yep, and fully vested. And so as people fully vest, as they go through that, remember that it's not just about the days that you're working at Foliance, it's about the days afterwards as well, as everyone else continues that work.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining me, Daniel. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I hope I get to chat with you again before your departure.
I believe that you will next week, Sean. And thank you for doing
Perfect.
this. The more that we get the word out, the more that people get engaged, just the better that Foliance will keep getting.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks for listening to ESOPOD. If you want to get in touch, send me an email at esopod@folience.com.